Thank you everyone, and very quickly, how many people here, if you could just stand up, just so you stay awake, are leather people, as in came to this event through the Roundtable for Responsible Leather? Great, we have some impressive mass, great. Thank you. All right, beef people, meet leather people. So I also I want to start by saying a huge thank you to GRSB. This is a dream that I have had almost since the beginning when we were first asked to take on leather. And I thought, OMG, how am I going to do this? So it was, one of the first things we did was we reached out to the GRSB and looked for ways that we could leverage each other's work and work together. And being here is the pinnacle of all my wishes to date. So a special thanks to Rory, to Sarah, to Mona in particular for their generous support, and thanks to all of you guys for being here. So a few words about Textile Exchange. We are a non-profit organization. We basically exist to drive sustainability in the textile industry. And I've dealt with farmers, as Rory said. I've worked on standards that deal with a number of other species, ducks and geese and sheep. And sometimes the reaction I get when they hear that I'm with an NGO is that I'm a animal-kissing, tree-hugging vegan, and I can't be spoken to. So I just want you to know, I care passionately about animals. I'm pretty much sacrificing my life and at least my parenting to save the environment. But I do wear real leather, and I do eat beef. So Textile Exchange is a global nonprofit. We're really, truly a virtual organization. We're scattered all around the world, so you can get us 24/7. And our membership is likewise. It's a very global membership. It crosses the whole value chain. And that's just a snapshot of some of the brands and retailers that we work with. Pretty much any big global apparel brand that you'll know of is probably associated with us. And really quick plug, the team that's here, we're going to be carrying on and going to Milan in a week and a half, and we are hosting our annual conference, which is going to be so far over 650 people are attending. So there's still space. I think we have up to 700 capacity, and we certainly welcome anybody to come. So these are the standards that Rory was talking about. We have standards that address, basically help brands make product claims around organic, recycled, responsible wool, responsible down. And we've developed these. Organic, obviously, is an existing kind of framework of standards, but in every other instance, we've designed the criteria as to what do we define responsible. For down, that was an animal welfare standard. It came in response to some of the attacks brands were getting because of live plucking and force feeding. And then with wool, the trigger issue for that was mulesing, but we created a more holistic standard that addressed animal welfare and then also addressed the land management. And then we tack on some social, environmental, and chemical use impacts that apply for a global recycle standard and that can exist on their own as well. But I'm here to talk to you about our initiative on responsible leather. And so it was about 2.5 years ago, a number of brands literally tackled me in the hallway of one of our conferences in India, and they said, we need you to do leather. We need a solution for leather. We've got down, we've got wool, but now it's leather. And that started a long journey of trying to figure out, okay, what is it they're actually asking for? And it was a lot. They want animal welfare, they want the environmental impacts at the farm level, they want social, they want traceability, and they want all the chemical impacts and so on all the way through the tannery. Leather supply chain is long, complex, and there's a lot going on. So we formed the Responsible Leather Roundtable. You can, guess where the inspiration for that one came. Really what we're trying to do is a few things. One, to create a place and a space for people to come in, share information, share their kind of success stories, and almost create a bit of a common voice for the industry. But most of the work that we've been doing is really creating a forum to agree on what are those priority issues that we need to address, and what is it we need to do to kind of take action and ultimately satisfy the needs of the brands, but also satisfy the needs of the rest of the whole supply chain. So we have a sector membership, pretty much like GRSB, brands and retailers, supply chain, producers, civil society, and then we also have another section for certification bodies, consultants, and the rest of us. And what we're doing is creating the responsible leather assessment tool. So this is not, we're not trying to create a standard, and there's been a lot of fear and confusion about that. But we recognize that this industry does not need a standard, and there's no standard that you could make that would cover the whole value chain from the cow-calf farm to the meat packing through to tanneries, sewing, etc. So what we're trying to do is wrap our arms around everything that's already happening, set some very clear and defined benchmarks, and then give a way for the brands to send a clear supply signal back down through their supply chain. And then also a way for the supply chain to tell that story back to the brands and ultimately out to consumers. Because it's, I worked for a brand for 15 years, and I know, when you're sourcing globally. Leather will be one component of many, many materials that you're buying, and you don't want to have to chase down 16 different initiatives and try to figure them out and then make claims to make sense to consumers. You just want kind of one message. So we're not a standard, but we're not against standards. And this is a little bit of an example of why we're not a standard. I mean, there's so much out there, and this is just a teeny tiny snapshot. GRSB kind of owns that whole territory from the cow-calf farm to slaughter and beyond, but we're not worried about the food side. You've got a lot of animal welfare standards. We've got numerous different standards that do different things at the tannery level. There's social standards that go through from tannery all the way through to sewing production. So what we're doing with the responsible leather assessment tool is we're kind of creating a container for all of that. And somehow we're going to sort through and try to create some clarity so that when somebody asks for responsible leather, they can get it. And it ties into our theory of change. So basically, we've seen this curve, I think, yesterday in another presentation. Everybody sits on this continuum or this bell curve. You've got some really good people at one end, you've got some really bad people at the other, and most of us sit in the middle, especially if you're Canadian. So what we're doing is we're basically saying, okay, this is what we're going to consider minimum best practices, a very arbitrary line. But the responsible leather assessment tool is going to say, okay, everything on this side of the line is considered to have met that minimum threshold. And then that gives a means for the brands to send the demand signal back down to the industry, and the industry to supply a safer supply of leather, or whatever you want to call it. But that's not enough, because all we're going to do is capture those people who are really doing the right thing. And that's good, and we want to reward them. But what we really want to do is drive more and more people towards those better practices. So that's what the Roundtable is going to do. And so it's not just having that tool that people are going to use. We want to also kind of support movement along that. And that's really going to be by working with GRSB and with other organizations to make that happen. So this is a really kind of rudimentary snapshot of where the tool is going. Just to say, there's a number of things that we see need to be addressed and that have come up. We're not going to address all of them in our first version. Some of them we'll kind of make note of and then address them more thoroughly in the second version. But for animal welfare, that's kind of a constant demand from all the brands. They want to see animal welfare addressed in some form at the farm level transport and at the slaughter. And I know some people say meat packing. In our world, we just talk about slaughter because it's more obvious to us. At the farm level, we're going to be focusing on deforestation. We're really focused at Textile Exchange on the Sustainable Development Goals, and we feel that by working with leather, we can really make a very large or much bigger impact on deforestation than try to take a very broad level approach. Tanning is a lot of issues around chemical use and effluent. And then social, we're not sure yet what we're going to do. And then we are going to address traceability and then data collection, because we want to always be collecting data so we can actually genuinely report out on what we're doing and know that we're actually leading to something good so we can kind of analyze and revise. So, beef people probably going, why leather? It's all about the cow. And I have to give a quote from a friend of mine. He said, what, the cow doesn't care whether it goes into a hamburger or a pair of boots, The cow is worried about the cow. But leather has global impacts, and it has it on all levels. At the tanning level, water and sanitation is a big issue. Decent work and economic growth, I mean, that applies all the way through the supply chain from, you know, how much value are the farmers getting? Are they able to make a subsistence living? Through to the people that are sewing the final products, and you know, there's forced labor within the leather supply chain and occupational health and safety issues. Climate action, that leads right back to the deforestation prevention. And then there's just life on land and all the broader impacts of farming. And just so, the other thing I would tell you about myself is I am in a farming family. My husband is a farmer, so I'm aware of all the kind of pressures and pulls from the different directions. He gets to sit in the tractor and play with the big machines. I get to worry about commodity prices and when it's going to break down next. So, yeah, so this is a good slide to show the numbers and the impact. So when we look at this, you know, depending on what measure you're going to do, the economic value of the skin of a cow can range from 0 to 20%. You know, I've heard figures up to 18 to 20% for veal, and 0 for, because in some cases the skins are just simply thrown out as waste. So that's not what's driving us as leather people. But what you should pay attention to is that the leather industry itself, depending on where you measure it, if it's kind of raw leather, cured leather, if you include leather products, I've seen figures from 40 billion to 100 billion, but it's big. And the value of the users of that leather is even bigger. I can't give you what that value is, but within our own list of stakeholders, we have about 400 stakeholders, many of them are brands. We just went through, we took all the brands that we'd find on Google and looked at their publicly traded value, and that was over $1.2 trillion. So those are the brands that are engaging with us because they already care. And the apparel industry is 1.7 trillion, but leather is also being used by automotive, furnishings, equestrian, and so on. And the leather industry is paying a lot of attention to the same things that you're paying attention to. I was just in Chicago at the U.S. Hide, Skin, and Leather Association, and we were talking about, you know, they're worried about all these pressures on cattle. Greenpeace is calling for, actually globally, for beef and dairy production to halve by 2050. That's going to affect the supply of skins. Likewise, there's a lot of leather alternatives. I'm constantly being told about some, you know, new thing, and we're not talking pleather anymore. We're talking bacterial growths that are turned into leathers, and I've seen them, and they're actually really good. But that's a threat to that value that you're getting out of the hides of your animals. And then we've got the Fashion Week in Helsinki decided we're going to be vegan, so no leather, and they thought that was a good thing. And of course, our favorite frenemy, PETA, People for Edible and Tasty Animals, I think it stands for. But they go after leather and they go after beef. It doesn't matter. They are coming after us all the time. So, yeah, and they've come after us on everything. We have a down standard, we have a wool standard. They have attacked Textile Exchange, they've attacked our standard, they've attacked the users of our standard. And I'm really happy to say that we're able to stand up to them. We're not claiming to be perfect, as Sarah would say. We really don't do that. And they kind of go, they're a little binary sometimes in the way they evaluate us. But, you know, the fact is we're making progress. We can stand behind what we're doing. We're doing what we can to verify that the animals have been treated well. And, you know, our standards are growing and the use of the fibers is continuing to grow. So then the other question I get is, why beef? And I had a Scottish leather producer call me up and say, why are you even looking at beef? I mean, we're just a byproduct of the beef industry and it really shouldn't be accounted for. And in a lot of LCAs, it barely is. But beef and leather are inextricably linked. So you can't really have one without the other. And, you know, that brings us back to the connection between Textile Exchange and GRSB. You know, we have very similar visions and very similar missions, even though we grew up from very different sides. And this isn't the mission and vision of our leather work. This is of our Textile Exchange as an organization. So I think we're all kind of playing the same game. We're just trying to get to the issues from different angles. And when we do look at GRSB, you know, you guys all know what the principles of GRSB are. Well, when we map that into our language, it's pretty much the same thing. You talk about natural resources, we talk about environmental impact. People in the community is social impact. Animal welfare is animal welfare. Food for you, we're not in the food business, but we do worry a lot about traceability and quality. And then efficiency and innovation, that just is a win for everybody, and it does lead, it's part and parcel of continuous improvement in education. So this is just to show you a snapshot of one of the many, like this is only focusing on land use change. When we map out all the different players, everybody's working on kind of a different piece of the elephant, to mix my metaphors, but everybody's taking action in all these different areas, and land use change and specifically deforestation has a lot of folks. So we've been really lucky to connect, initially through the GRSB and then National Wildlife Federation, WWF, and Collaboration for Forest and Agriculture. Like we're meeting the right people, and what we're trying to do is, rather than us kind of going off and doing one more solution to add to the pot, is to align the solutions that we develop with them so that we can add value and leverage the work that's already been happening. And this is, when you look at the beef in the leather industry, we share the same start of the supply chain. We all come, our products come from the cows, and we share the same consumers. People eat beef, people wear leather. And so GRSB works in this arena, and we need to work in this area. And GRSB has a big voice. It's been, you guys have been around for a long time, and you've developed a really strong relationship through to the meat packers and to the producers. We just have a little voice. And we were asked at one point, why hasn't you guys started to engage with the producers? Like, we don't even know how to get to them. So, on the other hand, apart from some obvious examples like McDonald's have a very strong consumer relationship, a lot of meat, like restaurants and supermarkets and so on, they have their connections with their consumer as an organization, but I don't think there's the same level of connection that you would get in the apparel and textile industry. I mean, people live and die by the brand of the purse that they're wearing, or the shoes that they're wearing, or the car that they're driving. It's really, really important. So they've got a really strong, they invest a huge amount in having that conversation with the consumers, and that's another thing that the leather industry can bring. It can really bring forward those messages. And in the end, we just share the same goals. I mean, we've shown that already. And this is my graphic. I sketched this together yesterday when we were hearing about all the different regional roundtables. And I was thinking, wow, there's a GRSB, but it's not just a GRSB. Then there's the regional roundtables, like Europe. And then they've got their sub-regional roundtables, like there's the UK, and then there's France, et cetera. And then under them, they've got their different groups they're working with. Are you working with Red Tractor, or Colombia, or somebody was working with, or I guess in Ireland, they're working with the APB and different other groups that help connect them to the producers. And at the end, GRSB has that connection with millions of producers. And we don't, apart from having a few personal relationships with some farmers, we don't have those connections. So that's where we see we're going to leverage you and your connections, and then hopefully add some value. So that gives us a lot of opportunities. We have opportunities to do things together. Leather Naturally is an organization of leather producers, and they are about to launch a big campaign to go to the Gen Z and the millennials to just promote leather, because leather sales are softening. It's facing a lot of the pressures that maybe beef is and other things. So they just want to really push for leather. They're not going to talk about where it comes from. They're not going to talk about sustainability, but they're going to promote it. And we will be in behind them, and I think we give them that support so that if they get attacked, no, there is a story about responsible leather, and then that is further supported by the Beef and Leather Supply Network that delivers good supply. So I want to just touch on a few things quickly. Traceability, one of the things, we're developing this tool, and we've got that brand message that needs to go back to the suppliers, and then the product has to go through the brand. We're going to do it in two ways. One is through full traceability, and there are a few examples where that's possible, and the Canadian Roundtable for Sustainable Beef with their standard, I think, will help enable that, and there's a few, I know JBS has some new technology that will help that. But these are some leather working group slides, and they've shown that traceability from the end of the leather supply chain back to the slaughterhouse or the direct farm is theoretically possible in these countries, and all the way to the birthing farm in even fewer countries. So, I mean, this is not gospel, but it just shows it's going to be hard. So what we're looking at is a credit system, and credit trading, book and claim system, where the cow-calf farms and the raising farm and the finishing farm, if they meet whatever we determine is to be responsible leather, and that doesn't mean that we have to certify them, they may be meeting Canadian standard, or they may be part of some kind of a GRS program or deforestation-free program, they can register for credits that will be basically one cow would equal one credit. And then the brand that wants to do a responsible leather run of boots will say, okay, we're going to use 600 hides for this run of boots. We're going to buy 600 credits. And then that money will flow back to those farmers directly, obviously a little bit of a processing fee. But it's a way that we can bypass the complexity and the cost addition that happens through a full traceability program. And it allows us to kind of launch everything much more quickly and get the scale and the volume that we really need to succeed. There's a lot of other things that we can do with this credit trading. We can focus credits in certain areas. We can divide them up. We can have super credits and so on. Tomorrow at the end of our day, we're going to have a session with an expert on that who's got a great history with soy, credits for soy and palm oil, and is now working with us on this. So if you're here, I fully encourage you to do that. But finally, it'll probably look something like this, where we've got credit trading for the live animal portion, and then more of a chain of custody for the tanneries. So I'll just end this by asking you to participate with us. We really welcome, we're top heavy, or sideways heavy or something. We have a lot of brands. We have some of the middle supply chain. We'd really like to have more voices directly from the producers, not just through GRSB. And whether it's today or in some of our future webinars and sessions, it's free to join us. And we just ask you to be open, listen, learn, share your reality, and to quote my favorite quote from Christine yesterday, think Ubuntu. I am because we are. So this is our session tomorrow. We have printouts of the agenda, and if any of you still want to register, you can do so at the desk outside. And that's it. Thank you.